Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf, which is Eruvin Daf Samach Vav. We are on the second line actually on the top line. It says the Gemara, Tohu Banardoi. This is referring back to the story where there were some Yisraelim who came to a Pundak, this hotel, and before Shabbos, there were no Nachrim, no Goyim present. So they established an Eruv amongst themselves to allow carrying. Why not? And then what happened was on Shabbos, the Goy, the owner, surfaced. So now we have a Nachri with Yisraelim, and this invalidates their Eruv. They can no longer carry here. The Eruv becomes possible. They need to do schirus from the Goy, and that's what they did. They did schirus, and actually Rabbi Yehuda sanctioned what they did. They came to ask him afterwards, and he said, Yafa Asisem, you act correctly. And after the schirus, how can they carry? So Rashi and Tosfos explain that they do bittul, because they can't make another Eruv on Shabbos. An Eruv can only be done before Shabbos and activated during Mena Shmashos. Once that Eruv that they had already established before Shabbos became batal due to the Goy's arrival, now after they do schirus from the Goy, the only way they can carry is if they do bittul. So all the Yisraelim will mavatal their usage rights to one Yisrael. He becomes the sole property owner, and this allows carrying. That's what happened in the story. Says the Gemara on the top line, Tohu Banardoi. So the people from Nardoi, what Tohu? Tohu means they examined, they challenged it. The literal translation, Rashi says, means Meiriach, smelled. They smelled, they examined, they challenged it. Umiyam Rabbi Yehuda Hachi? Did Rabbi Yehuda really say that schirus from a guy can take place even on Shabbos? Did Rabbi Yehuda say that schirus is like making an Eruv? My love, shall we now assume that the equation goes as follows? Ma ma'arv mi ba'idyoim. Just as an Eruv needs to be established when? Before Shabbos, because it's activated ben hashmashos. Af seichen ba'idyoim. Likewise, if one wishes to be seichen from a guy, when does he need to do it? Before Shabbos. You can't do it on Shabbos, it's too late. Because all these halachas become determined during ben hashmashos. Once Shabbos comes, you can't change the equation. You can't be seicher. So how did Rabbi Yehuda allow them to do schirus on Shabbos? Says Marloi. That wasn't the point of the equation. What Rabbi Yehuda said, seicher is like ma'arif. He didn't mean lechumra. He meant only lekula. As Rashi says, kol be'eruvin lahakol. He meant to apply that equation lekula for leniencies. How many? 3 of them. Says Marloi, we didn't mean to equate it lechumra, rather lekul. Number 1, ma ma'arev afilu pachas m'shavar pruta. We compare schirus to Eruv. Just as Eruv can be done with less than a shavar pruta's worth of bread, as long as it's food, doesn't matter. The value doesn't really matter. Therefore, even if it's less than a shavar pruta, it's okay. Af seicher b'pachas m'shavar pruta. Likewise, the schirus of a goy can take place with less than a pruta. Actually, Rabbi Yehuda himself stated this halacha on the Samach Beis Amud Aleph, that you can make these schirus on Shabbos from a goy with less than a pruta. The second connection between schirus and Eruv is, just as Eruv can be done through the socher belokit. Socher is the laborer, the worker. Belokit is a seasonal worker who have usage rights to the goy's property. They live there, whatever. They have a foothold there. And just as if the socher belokit of a goy are Yisraelim, so you have a Yisrael worker living by a goy, usage rights by the goy, he is considered like the property owner. It's a kula. We consider him to be a representative of the property of the goy, and he can go ahead and contribute to the Eruv of the Chatzar, or the other Yisraelim, as though the property owner is a Yisrael. So just as that halacha applies to Eruv, likewise, when it comes to schirus, you want to rent the goy's property. He happens to have a socher or a lokit, a goy. That fellow, that socher or lokit, can go ahead and rent out his boss's property as though he's the owner. So this is the second connection between socher and ma'arif. Number 3, umam ma'arif chamisha sheshruin mechatzer achas. Just as when it comes to Eruv, you have 5 people residing in a chatzar. and they go ahead and they make an Eruv amongst themselves. Then they'd like to connect, make a joint Eruv with the Chatzar next door, across the wall. There's a Pesach in between which allows them to join together. So just as over there, the halacha is, they don't all need to go ahead and bring their bread over to the next Chatzar. Echad ma'arav alidei kulam. One of them could represent them. He could take his own bread, bring it over the fence to the next Chatzar, and that will accomplish a connection on behalf of all the members of his Chatzar. He represents them. Soicher, likewise, when it comes to Soicher, they need to rent from a guy. Do they all need to trouble themselves to approach the guy personally? No. You have 5 people living in a Chatzar, 5 Israel, and they're going to make an Eruv amongst themselves. The problem is there's a guy living there. They need to make schirus. One fellow could approach the guy, rent his property, and that's going to accomplish schirus on behalf of all the other members of the Chatzar. So the Gemara's response is, the response to Nahadai, is that Rabbi Yehuda said, Seicher is like Eruv. He didn't mean l'chumra. He didn't mean that just as Eruv can be done on Shabbos, schirus as well can be done on Shabbos. He meant l'kula, pertaining to these 3 halachas. Number 1, you can do schirus with less than a pruta. Number 2, you can even rent from the worker of the guy, the sachar, the locket. And number 3, one Yisrael can approach the guy independently, rent his property, and it'll be considered as though all the other members rented it from him, because he's considered to be a representative of his fellow Chatzar members. Continues the Gemara. Getting back to that story, where the Yisraelim came to this pundak, they did Eruv, then the guy showed up, the Eruv became batal. So they were seicher from him on Shabbos, and then they were mevatel to each other. Tahi bar Rabbi Lazar. So a similar term here, tahi, meaning he examined, he challenged it. How can we allow this? How can they go ahead and do schirus and then bittul and allow carrying? So that was his challenge. He didn't express himself. He didn't explain what the problem is. Amar Reb Zera. So Reb Zera said, "Mighty hiya de Reb Lezer." Well, what was his problem here? What's the concern? Why did Reb Lezer question what they did? Amar Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes responded to Reb Zera, "Gavar Rabba, Reb Zera lo yoda, mighty hiya de Reb Lezer." Such a great man like Reb Zera can't figure out what Reb Lezer's challenge, Reb Lezer's problem was. I'll tell you what his problem was. He had a kasha based on the statement that his Rebbe Shmuel said. What was that statement? Shmuel gave us a framework. He established the guidelines of when bittul can be applied and when it cannot be applied. As follows. Damar Shmuel. Kol makam she'isrin uma'arvin mevatlan. If we have a situation where, let's say, take a classic situation of bittul, which is 10 people living in a chatzar. They made an Eruv, and one of them forgot. He neglected to take part in the Eruv. So now we do bittul. He's mavatal, his rishus, relinquishes his rights, gives it over to them. It's as though he doesn't exist, as though he's just a guest here. That's your typical case. Now in this case, you actually have 2 elements present. Number 1, it's oisrin. They need to make an Eruv. This Eruv is a required Eruv. Otherwise they can't carry. They're living together in one chatz, they need to make an Eruv. Uma Arvin. They have the ability to make an Eruv because they're in one enclosed area. Says Shmuel, only in such a case where Kol Makam She'oisrin, when they are oiser each other, if there's no Eruv. Uma Arvin. And they indeed have the ability to make an Eruv. And for some reason they didn't make an Eruv. Mavatlan. Then they can apply bittul. The point of bittul is to provide a alternative in a case of necessity, a case where there's isser without an Eruv. They need to make an Eruv, and for some reason they don't work out. Chacham allow it. It's an allowance to make bittul. It's not a l'chatchila. Not meant to proceed l'chatchila and do bittul. Ideally, Eruv is in place, but the bittul is an alternative. It's option B in a situation, a case of necessity. So it's a flip side of Eruv, where you need to make an Eruv, where you can make an Eruv, and for some reason the Eruv didn't work out. Bittul is an alternative. However, if, let's say, both these elements that we just mentioned, Oisr and Ma'arv, are not present, then the bittul won't work. Ma'arvin ve'ein Oisrin. You have a case where they have the ability to make an Eruv, but it's not required, such as where you have a chutzner on either side of a wall, with a door in between. They're two separate areas. They don't need to make an Eruv. They can choose to join together. So that's the Ma'arvin ve'ein Oisrin. In this case, only one element is present. They have the ability to make Eruv, but they're not Oisr. Or Oisrin ve'ein Ma'arvin. Let's say you have the other element present. They're Oisr each other, but they don't have the ability to make an Eruv. The Gemara will get to that soon. It's going to be the case of the guy. So there's an Isser taking place, but they don't really have the ability to make an Eruv. In this case, in both these cases, where only one element is present, Ein Mevat, Bittul won't work. Because Bittul is only in a case where an Eruv can be made and needs to be made. That's the flip side of Eruv. But if both these elements are not present, Chacham will not mesaken Bittul. And the Gemara will explain. So this was a statement of Shmuel. The Gemara now will explain in detail what he meant, what each part of the statement is referring to. Kol makam she'oisrin u'ma'arvim in batlan. What's the case where they are oisir each other and they are ma'arvim, meaning they have the ability to make Eruv, and in the absence of Eruv, there's Isser. So it's required. In this case, Bittul works. What is that example? Kegoin. Beis chatzeros zu lifnei mizu. You have one chatzer within the other. So you have, let's say, Rosh Hashanah on one side. Next to it, you have one chatzer. And behind that, you have another chatzer who can only access the Rosh Hashanah by walking through the exterior chatzer. So you have a chitza in the exterior chatzer, and you have a pnimi hiding behind an interior chatzer. So shtei chatzers zu lifnei mizu. This is a case where they are ma'arvin, also oisrin. So let's say the interior chatzer never made an Eruv amongst themselves. Now when they walk out through the chatzer chitzon, the drisas haregel is oiser. They're pedestrian rights. In fact, they have walk-through rights. Who will make even the chatzer chitzon asa to carry. So unless they go ahead and they make an Eruv, one with the other, they join together two chatzeros with an Eruv, it's going to be aser. So that's the case of oisrin u'ma'arvin. They can make an Eruv, and they need to make an Eruv with each other. In this case, ma'arvin. In this case, mevatlin. They can go ahead and be mevatel to each other. In a case where they neglected to make a proper Eruv. So that's the first aspect of Shmuel's statement. We have oiser and we have ma'ar, then bittul works. However, in the other cases where you don't have both of these elements present, ma'arvin ven oisr, a mevatlin, where Eruv is possible, it's an option, but there's no Isser. It's not required. In this case, they cannot do Bittul. Because the point of Bittul, Rashi explains, is it's a takana. If not Bittul, they won't be able to carry. It's going to be Isser, and the Chacham said, okay, we'll allow Bittul. It's a special allowance. But in a case where there's no Isser, if there's no Eruv, then Bittul was not given as an option. What is an example of such a situation? You have a chatzar on either side of a wall. You have a Pesach running from one chatzar to the other. So now they can choose to make separate Eruvs. They can choose to join together. So this is your case of ma'arvin. They have the option to make Eruv, but ein oisrin. Let's say they don't join together in Eruv. Are they oiser each other? No. They're two separate entities. They're not walking through each other like the previous case. So in this case, bittul is not applicable. Finally, oisrin ve'ma'arvin ein mevatlin. The case where they are oiser each other, but they don't have an Eruv option. Likewise, in this case, bittul will not work, because bittul is a flip side of Eruv. Where Eruv is applicable and required, then bittul is another option. However, if it's only Oiser, but there's no Eruv option there, then Bittul won't work. What's the case that we're referring to? La'asuya mai. What does it come to include? La'asuya nachri. Apparently it's come to include the case of a guy. a guy living with two Israelim. He's Oyster on them. They don't have an option of Erev, and therefore they can't do Bittul. The Gemara will analyze. What do you mean? When did the guy come? Now, if the guy came yesterday, meaning he was here before Shabbos, let them rent it from him, and then make an Erev. So, Erev here is an option. This is not called Oisrin Ve'en Ma'arvin. If a guy was here before Shabbos, true, you have to undergo, there's a process here that has to be developed. A two-stage process. First you have to do Schirus. After you do Schirus, now you can establish the Erev. So it's a two-step process, but nevertheless Erev is applicable. At the end of the day you can make an Erev. So since you have that ability, since you can make the Erev before Shabbos, then this Makam here is a place that has Erev option, and it's also Oyser. So both elements are present. Now, even if they didn't actually do the Erev before Shabbos, but this Makam has the option to make Erev in it. Because since the guy was here before Shabbos, they could have been Seicher, and they could have made an Erev. So this type of Makam allows for Bittul as well. So can't be speaking about that case. Shmuel cannot be coming to exclude this case. This case fits the criterion perfectly. It has Oyser, it has Mar. Apparently, says Rav Sheshes, this is all Rav Sheshes speaking. He's come to explain what Rabbi Lezer's kasha was. Rabbi Lezer challenged the whole story. He says, how can they do Bittul? Rav Sheshes was explaining. He says, such a great man like Rav Zera wouldn't understand what the problem is, and he quoted Shmuel, and he went and explained and elaborated to the point that he's going to prove that this scenario here, this story where the guy came on Shabbos, poses problems, poses concerns. Apparently we're speaking, when Shmuel says that Bittul won't work, is speaking a case where the guy came on Shabbos. What do he means like this? Apparently, when Shmuel says that you have a case where there's Isser but there's no Erev, then Bittul won't work. He's apparently speaking about a case where the guy came on Shabbos itself, such as our story, where they made an Erev before Shabbos, not knowing the guy was going to be here. On Shabbos, suddenly the guy surfaces. Now the Erev becomes Batal. That's halacha. When a guy is here, the Erev is Batal. Now they go and they rent it from him, as they did. And now, they would like to make Bittul. They can't do Bittul. Why? Because at this point in time right now, can they make Erev? No, you can't make Erev on Shabbos. All agree that Erev needs to be activated before Shabbos, during Ben HaShmoshes. Now the Erev that they already made was Batal Mavutal, totally nullified. So after they do the Schirus, they can't go ahead and make a new Erev. Can't do it on Shabbos. So we have a situation where we have Oyser, the guy is Oyser, but Ein Ma'arvin, they can't make it. They can no longer make an Erev on Shabbos. Certainly not this Shabbos. So this is what Shmuel meant, that Oyserin Ve'ein Ma'arvin Ein Mavatlim. This is not a place which allows for Erev, therefore it doesn't allow for Bittul, because Bittul is a flip side of Erev. It's option B of Erev. It's Mihilchas Erev. It's another aspect of Erev. If you can't do Erev, you can't do Bittul. Shmamina, indeed we have a raya from here, that situation where the Nachri shows up on Shabbos would not allow for Bittul. And this was Rabbi Lezer's kasha on the story. That apparently, according to Shmuel, they would not have been able to do Bittul in this situation. Okay, so to summarize things, we have Shmuel's guidelines for Bittul. Very simply put, you need to have two elements to allow Bittul. Oyser Ma'arv. The Erev needs to be an option and a required option. Only when both those elements are present is Bittul to be applied, which is an allowance. So as to make it easier, it shouldn't be an Isser to carry in a place where they're meant to carry. And therefore, when both elements are present, the Chacham allowed Bittul. But if only one of those two elements are present, that's not sufficient to allow Bittul. But apparently Rabbi Yehuda, by the way, who supported what they did, he allowed them to make the Schirus, and apparently the Bittul as well, he disagrees with Shmuel. He holds that we don't have to follow these guidelines, as we're soon going to see in the Gemara. Very clearly, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with Shmuel. Let's continue. Rabbi Yosef, lo yishmi li hashmata. I never heard this halacha. Which halacha is referring to? That Shmuel says that a case where there's Isser and Erev, you can do bittul, such as the case where you have one chatzar within the other. Shtei chatzeres zu lefnim zu. You have an exterior and an interior. So the fact that they walk through makes it Asr. They're Isser on each other and they need to make an Erev. In this case, if they, for some reason, did not make the Erev, bittul will work. So Yosef said, I never heard this halacha. Lo shmi lo shmaita. That the bnei hapnimis, the fellows coming out of the interior chutzner, can be mavatal their walk-through rights, their pedestrian rights to the outer chutzner. Can relinquish it, give it up. Which will now allow the members of the outer chutzner to carry within their chutzner and not reckon with the fellows walking through. I never heard this halacha. Abaye told him, At Amris Nilan, you yourself taught us this halacha. Rashi points out Rabbi Yosef fell ill and he shachach Talmudai, he forgot his learning. Many times in the Gemara we see that Abaye reminds him very gently about the halacha that he himself taught it. So you himself taught us this halacha, Amris Nilan, and it was actually on the following statement of Shmuel that you mentioned this halacha. The Omar Shmuel, Ein bittul rishus mechatz l'chatz. That you cannot do bittul from one chatzah to the other. So if you're living in this chatzah, you can't go relinquish your rights to the other chatzah to allow carrying, as we're soon going to see exactly which case he's speaking about. That's the blanket statement that he made. You can't do bittul from one chatzah to the other. The only time you can do bittul is within your own chatzah, but not to the other chatzah. So that's the first part of Shmuel's halacha. Number two, he said, ve'ein bittul rishus b'churva. You cannot do bittul in a churva. Rashi describes this as a ruins, some collapsed home, dilapidated home that's situated between two inhabited homes. Now, in order for them to carry in this churva, they need to make an erev with each other, because it's a place which is equally accessed by two homes. It's a shared usage area. They need to make an erev. If they don't make an erev, then bittul is required. And Shmuel says bittul in this case won't work. Farshim explained because bittul is only to allow in a situation of necessity. In a chutzner, which is a typical place of carrying, typical usage area. And that's required. You need to carry that. Chacham allowed it through bittul as well. But a churva, which is just a ruin, that's not your high usage area, according to Shmuel, bittul will not apply by churva. V'amris lanalo. Now, this is Abaye speaking to Rav Yosef. You explain to us on this halacha of Shmuel. Ki yomar Shmuel, ein bittul rishus mechatz l'chatzer. When did Shmuel say that bittul won't work from one chatzah to the other? Lo yamaran. That's only said el shtei chatzeris. U'pesach echad b'neim. Let's say you have a chatzah on either side of a wall with a pesach in that wall, leading from one chatzah to the other. In which case they have a double option. They can make their own independent erevs, because it's separated by a wall. If they so choose, they could join together. So here we have ma'arvin. They have an erev option, but it's not oiser. It's not required. So that's why they can't make it. They can't do bittul to allow transferring from one chatzah to the other. That's why Shmuel says you can't do bittul mechatz l'chatzah, because we have a situation where although erev is an option, but there's no requirement to make erev. But in a situation where they are required to make an erev, you have one chatzar inside the other, behind the other chatzar. In which case they are oiser because the members of the interior chatzar, chatzar primus, are going to walk through the chitzayna on the way to Rosh Hashanah. In this case, they are going to make iser for the bnei chitzayna. Metoich she'oisen zeh. Since they are oiser on each other, me'ev batlan. In this case, they can do bittul if for some reason they didn't do an erev. So this is all Abaye speaking to Rav Yosef. You yourself told us. When Shmuel tells us that you can't do bittul from one chatzah to the other, yeah, it's only when you have two separate chatzeres on either side of a wall, in which case there's no iser taking place. They don't infringe on each other, don't interfere with each other. Therefore, bittul was not given as an option. But in a case where they infringe on each other, when it's one chutzner walking through the other, it's exterior chutzner and behind it an interior chutzner, which is using the chutzner chutzner as a walkthrough to pass through to get to Shusarab. In this case, they are iser on each other, and therefore they could do bittul. So this is Abaye's shita in Shmuel, and he's quoting Rabbi Yosef to this extent. Oh, Malay. So Rabbi Yosef responded, "Ano, amina mishmei Shmuel. Really? I said this halacha in the name of Shmuel, that in some situations you could do bittul from one chatzah to the other." V'amar Shmuel, didn't Shmuel say, "Ein lanu be'eruvin ela kolosha mishnasenu." When it comes to applying halachas and heter, we can't add more heter than the actual wording of the Mishnah. That was what Shmuel said. Now, which Mishnah is Shmuel referring to? Which halacha? So Rav Yosef continues speaking. He says, apparently, what Shmuel was referring to was bittul. Referring to the Mishnah that says, Anshe Chotzer, people living in a Chotzer, where one of them forgot to make an Eruv, they can do bittul. The fact is, the Mishnah says, Anshe Chotzer, singular. Apparently, only bittul can only work within the same Chotzer, to your fellow Chotzer members. But you cannot be mavatal to the other Chotzer. If people in the Chatzeros forgot to make an Eruv, they can do bittul to each other. So this is Rabbi Yosef challenging Abai. It seems that Shmuel holds you meant to be very meticulous in interpreting the lashon of the Mishnah. Which Mishnah was referring to? Anshe Chatzer, which indicates that bittul only works within the Chatzer. You can't be mavatal to the other Chatzer, even if it's a walkthrough, even if it's one Chatzer within the other. Abai told him, no. Ki amrslan ein lanu be'eruvin ela kolosha mishnasenu. When you told us in the name of Shmuel that when it comes to halachas of Eruvin, you must follow the exact wording of the Mishnah, it was unrelated to halach of bittul. Aho amrslan. It was actually in reference to a different concept altogether. The Mishnah which said Shamove l'chatzeris, that the move, the alleyway which is servicing the courtyards, serves in a similar function kechatzer lebatam, as the chatzer surrounding and servicing the homes. There's a Mishnah later on, Dafayin Gimel, and we learn from there some unrelated halacha that a proper mavli is meant to have two chatzeros and two houses, unrelated to halacha of bittul. And that's what you're referring to. That were meant to be medayik in the lashon of that Mishnah, pertaining to halacha of a mavli. When it comes to bittul, certainly you can go ahead and be mevatel of one chatzah to the other, such as in the situation we just described, where the members of one chatzar are going to be oiseh the other chatzar, as in the case where we have shtei chatzeros zu lifnei mizu. Okay, so in summary, we have Shmuel telling us bittul doesn't work from one chatzar to the other, doesn't work in a churva, which is not a prime usage area. Abaye interprets Shmuel's restriction, Shmuel not allowing bittul from one chatzar to the other, to be pertaining only to a case where you have a chatzar on either side of mechitza, in which case Eruv is not really required. So in that case, Chacham did not provide the allowance of bittul. But in a case where Eruv is required, when you have one chatzar within the other, and there's a walkthrough there, there's Isser taking place. In this case, certainly even Shmuel would agree that bittul will work. And this is consistent with the way the Gemara interpreted Shmuel earlier as well. That in the case of two chatzeros, one inside the other, where there's Issa taking place, bittul will work. However, in the case of chatzeros on either side of mechitza, in which case Eruv is not crucial at all, because they can carry independently, in this case bittul won't work. Later on, actually, is going to be a machlekes. Rav is going to maintain that even in the case where chatzeros are within each other, bittul will not work according to Shmuel. He has one case, just one exception, which we're going to see where Rav maintains that even Shmuel would agree it works. But at this point we're following Abaye's shita, who holds that whenever there is an oiser and a ma'arev, then you could do bittul. Gufa, we just learned on Shmuel, ein bittul rishus b'chatzah l'chatzah. You can't do bittul from one chatzah to the other. Ve'ein bittul rishus b'churva, nor can bittul work when it comes to churva, which is not a prime usage area. Rabbi Yehuda Amar, he is very mekel. Rabbi Yehuda holds, you don't need to conform to those guidelines we mentioned earlier. You don't need to be Eiser, etc. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says, Yesh bittul rishus mechatz l'chatz. You can make a bittul from one chatzah to the other, even if they're on both sides of mechitza, where they don't really interfere with each other at all. But bittul is allowed in order to allow transferring from one chatzah to the other. Yesh bittul rishus b'churva. And you can do bittul when it comes to a churva, which is situated between two homes, even though it's not an area of prime use. Rabbi Yehuda holds, we don't limit bittul. It doesn't have to conform to certain criteria. Anytime you need bittul, you can apply bittul. What's tzricha? Now, we have two separate machlekes here, but they have one underlying principle here. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you can do bittul wherever you need it. You can do it from one chatzah to the other. You can do it in a churva. Whereas Shmuel holds, bittul was only allowed out of necessity. In the area of primary use, in a chatzah but not in a churva. Only where, in absence of bittul, it would be asa to carry. What's tzricha? Why do we need both separate machlekes here between Shmuel and Rabbi Yehuda, since they're really based on the same concept? Says the Gemara, tzricha, indeed both are needed. Because had we only learnt the machlekes pertaining to bittul from one chatzah to the other, where Shmuel says no, Rabbi Yehuda says yes, I would say, Bahal Kamar Shmuel, it's only over there where Shmuel says that bittul won't work, because there's an easy way out. Mishum dahat hashmish l'chud, b'hat hashmish l'chud. Each chatzar has its own usage right, its own usage area. Each tashmish is l'chud. And since there's no real necessity for bittul, we don't allow it. Aval churva the tashmish t'chalat havayu, as opposed to the churva, which is situated smack in between two homes. It's a joint usage area. Erev is required there, otherwise they can't carry it. Perhaps you would agree to Rabbi Yehuda, bittul can be applied. Therefore, we learn the machlekes by churva as well, which Shmuel tells us. And since it's not a chatzar, it's not an area of typical usage area, therefore bittul doesn't apply. Had we only learned the machlekes pertaining to churva, perhaps I would say, Baha kam Rabbi Yehuda. It's only over there. Rabbi Yehuda allows bittul because ultimately it's one usage area. And without bittul they can't carry. But in the case where you have two chatzeres, meaning one on either side of mechitza, in which case bittul is not a necessity. They can perfectly well carry in their own chatzer. That bittul cannot be applied here. Tzricha, therefore, both cases are necessary to teach us a chiddush on both accounts. So, in conclusion, Rabbi Yehuda is very mekel. He says you can apply bittul in any situation where you need it. So, whether they're Eiser, even if there's no Erev option, such as in the case of the Goy, which arrived on Shabbos, bittul could work. If they are Ma'arev, but they're not Eiser, such as in the case of the two Chatzeres on either side of Mechitza, they can make an Erev, but there's no Isser there, Rabbi Yehuda said it's okay. And likewise in the Churva, which is situated between two homes, although it's just a ruins, it's not an area of primary use, Rabbi Yehuda said it's okay. Whereas Shmuel sets forth very strict guidelines. You need to have two elements present to allow for bittul. Number one is Eiser, number two is Ma'arev. There needs to be an Erev option and a necessity. There has to be a need to make an Erev. And only there do we say that bittul is an alternative for the Erev. And also he holds that a churva won't have bittul because it's not an area of primary use. So the point is really one. Chacham only allow bittul out of necessity, absolute necessity. Amar Abaye. Now we're going to analyze Shmuel again. Amar Abaye. Hadamar Shmuel ein bittul rishus mechatz l'chatzer. This that Shmuel tells us that bittul cannot be applied from one chatzer over to the other chatzer. Lo ya'mar ela b'shtei chatzeros u'pesach echad b'neim. That's only said. We had this Gemara earlier. That's only said when it's a chatzer on either side of a wall with a pesach going from one to the other. So there's no Eiser in here because there's two separate, distinct entities. All you have is Ma'arv, and they have the option to join together, but there's no Eiser. If there's no real necessity, a bittul cannot be applied. But if you have a configuration of two chatzeros, one within the other, in which case the interior one is using the exterior chatzer as a walk-through, due to the fact that they are Eiser, then Bittul can be applied if for some reason the Erev wasn't done. So far so good. This is consistent with what we learned up until this point, because we were following Shittas Abaye in the way he explains, interprets Shmuel. Now we have a new aspect to Shmuel, which is Rav Shit, who's going to say that no, even in this case, Shmuel will not allow bittul, because it's from one chatzar to the other. Bittul is only something which can be done to your fellow chatzar members, but to a different chatzar it doesn't work. Except for one situation, a very unique case, which we're going to see a bit later. Rav Amar afilu shtei chatzeres sulif nemizu. Even in that case, we have one within the other. Pa'amim mevatlim. Sometimes bittul works, or pa'amim ein mevatlim. Sometimes not. Ketzad. How is that to be? As follows. The Gemara will give us 4 scenarios. In 3 cases, bittul won't work. In the 4th it will. So we have 2 chatzeres. Now, Rashi explains this a couple of times, that the joining of the chatzeres through an Erev would take place as follows. They would collect some food. One chatzer will collect its own Erev. They would take that Erev material and bring it over to the other chatzer. This will link them to the other chatzer and join them together. So we have 2 chatzeres. Sometimes they can put the Erev material in this chatzer, and sometimes in the other chatzer. It's up to them how they want to set it up. In either case, what happens is the same thing. You have the same results. The chatzeres have now joined together. Says the Gemara, Ketzad, how do we find some cases where bittul works, some cases not? Nosnei Eruvin b'chitzayin. We have 2 chatzeres, one within the other. The pnimi is going to be walking through the chitzayin. So they need to make an Erev. Where do they place the Erev material? B'chitzayna. In the outer Erev. So the Bnei Pnimis collected some food, which is their Erev, and then placed that Erev material outside in the chitzayna, and that joined them together. But somebody forgot to make an Erev. V'shachach echad bein min ha'pnimis ubein min ha'chitzayna v'lo yirev. Somebody, one of the members of either the pnimi or the chitzaynis, forgot to make an Erev. Shtein asuros. In this case, there's no bittul option. They're both going to be asur. Bittul doesn't work, as we're going to explain soon. So we have 2 cases. Right? In both cases, they put the Erev in the chitzayna. We have one case where the Ben HaPnimis forgot to make an Erev, or the Ben HaChitzayna forgot to make an Erev. In both cases, bittul is not an option. Nosnei Eruvin b'Pnimis. However, if they place the Erev material inside, in the Chatzar HaPnimis, on behalf of both Chatzeres. So they place the Erev inside, and what happened? V'shachach echad min ha'pnimis v'lo yirev. And one of the Bnei Pnimis, one of the members of the interior Chatzar, forgot to participate in the Erev. Shtein asuros. In this case as well, everybody's asur, and the Erev is invalid. Bittul won't work. However, in this last and final case, where shachach echad min ha'chitzayna v'lo yirev, one of the Bnei Chitzayna forgot to participate, Pnimis materes v'chitzayna asura. And the Pnimis, who are hosting the Erev material, they'll be mutter to carry within their chatzar. The chitzayna asura, but the Bnei Chitzayna will remain asur. And in this case, bittul will work. Since one of the Bnei Chitzayna forgot to be mishtatef in the Erev, they'll make bittul to Bnei Pnimis. They won't come in, they won't interfere with them, and they can go ahead and carry within their chatzar and ignore the chitzayna. The Gemara will explain why this case is unique and different than the others. Now the Gemara will go back and explain all the cases. So let's go back. Nosnei Eruvin b'chitzayna. Let's say they placed the Erev material in the chatzar chitzayna. V'shachach echad, and somebody forgot to participate. Bein min ha'pnimis, bein min ha'chitzayna. Whether he's a member of the pnimis or of the chitzayna, v'lo yirev, shtein asuros, they're both asur. Both chatzeres are now asur. Why? Bittul won't work. Explains the Gemara why. Hai bar pnimis, l'man nevatel. Let's take the case where the member of the chatzar pnimis neglected to participate. So he's going to want to make bittul. To who should he make bittul? Levatel b'nei pnimis? Should he be mevatel to the fellow pnimi members, his fellow neighbors? He can't do that. Lessa lirovayu gabayu. They don't have the Erev. They're not the host of the Erev. He needs to be mevatel also to the Bnei Chitzayna. They're the host of the Eruv. The Eruv is there. So what good is it for him to be mevatel just to the members of the Pnimi? They're not the hosts of the Eruv. Says him, okay, levatel of Bnei Chitzayna. Let him do bittul additionally to the Bnei Chitzayna as well. Let him mevatel to everybody, to his fellow Chatzar members. I apologize for not taking place in the Eruv, not taking part in the Eruv. Let me mevatel to you my Rishus. And also approach the Bnei Chitzayna and do the same. Well, that won't work. A bittul Rishus mechatzar l'chatzar, bittul will never work from one chatzar to the other. Since he resides here, he cannot be mevatel his Rishus to the Bnei Chatzar Chitzayna. So that's out. Now let's say the person who forgot to participate in the Eruv was not a Ben Pnimis, but rather he was a member of the Chatzar Chitzayna. Bittul won't work. Why? So the Gemara will explore. Hi bar Chitzayna l'man mevatel. Who should he be mevatel to? We'll have the same equation. Levatel Bnei Chitzayna. Should he be mevatel to his fellow members, Chitzayna members? That's not enough. Ika Pnimis de Asra Alayu. Let's remember the Bnei Chatzar Pnimis are walking through, are using this as a walkthrough. So they're also here. They're also using the Chatzar. So by him being mevatel just to the Bnei Chitzayna, that won't help anything. Levatel Bnei Pnimis? Should he be mevatel Rishus also to the Bnei Pnimis, who are joint users in this area? Ein bittul Rishus mechatzar l'chatzar. You can't be mevatel from one chatzar to the other. So he, being a Ben Chitzayna, cannot be mevatel to Bnei Pnimis. So that's why, in both these cases, bittul won't work. Again, we're speaking where they place the Eruv in the Chatzar Chitzayna. So if the Ben Pnimis forgot, he can't do bittul. Because for him to just do bittul to the Bnei Pnimis, that's not sufficient, because they can't separate themselves from Bnei Chitzayna and carry. They don't have the Eruvin. So we'll go ahead and also be mevatel Bnei Chitzayna. Can't do bittul from one chatzar to the other. If the Ben Chitzayna forgot, have the same problem. If he's only going to be mevatel his fellow chatzar members, what about the other people that are walking through? They're also joint users of this area. They're also part of the equation. Okay, so be mevatel to them as well, to Bnei Pnimis. They can't, because they belong inside. He's outside. You can be mevatel from one chatzar to the other. Continues the Gemara. Okay, what about the case where Nasnu Eruvin Pnimis? They place their Eruv material on behalf of both chatzeros in the interior chatz. V'shachach echad min ha'pnimis v'le'irev. And one of the Pnimi members did not participate in the Eruv. Shtein asuris. In this case, everybody's us. Why? Because bittul is not an option. Why? Hai bar Pnimis leman nevatel. Who should this person be mevatel to? Levatel b'nei Pnimis. Should he be mevatel to the fellow Pnimi members? Ika Chitzayna de Asra Alayu. Even if he's mevatel to his fellow chatzar members, let's remember, the Eruv material really represents all the members of both chatzeros. Meaning that the Bnei Chatzar Chitzayna really have access to the Chatzar Pnimi as well, because their Eruv is there. That's their Makam Dira. So he has to reckon with them as well. So if he just ignores them and he does bittul to his fellow members, Ika Chitzayna de Asra Alayu. The members of the Chatzar Chitzayna create Isser here, because they're coming in here, and they don't have his bittul. So if his bittul doesn't apply to them, he hasn't really accomplished anything. So what are you going to say? Levatel Bnei Chitzayna. Let him add bittul also to the Bnei Chitzayna. He'll be mevatel to the Pnimi and to the Chitzayna. You can't do that. Ein bittul Rishus mechatzar l'chatzar. You cannot do bittul cross chatzar bittul. So this option's out. We have one more option left. Shachach echad min ha'chitzayna v'le'irev. So back to the case where the Eruv material on behalf of both chatzeros was placed where? In the Chatzar Pnimis. And who forgot? Echad min ha'chitzayna. One of the members of the exterior chatzar forgot to take part in the Eruv. Shachach echad min ha'chitzayna v'le'irev. In this case, we have a solution. Vadai Pnimis mutaris. The Chatzar Pnimis can carry throughout its chatzar. Why? The Achdadasha or Mishtamsha. They just close the door. They lock out the Bnei Chitzayna. Don't come in here. You want to come in here because your Eruv is here? Well, you should have properly participated in the Eruv. You didn't properly participate. One of you fellows didn't contribute to the Eruv. So please don't come in here. You're ruining it for all of us. You don't really belong here. It's not really your access route. We're the interior chutzner. You're not really meant to walk through here. It's only the eruv, which we establish on behalf of all of us, which is bringing you in here, making this your makam dir. But now that you haven't really properly participated, stay out. Don't ruin things for us. So in this case, bittul will work. The bnei chatzar chitzoni can mevatel their access to the chatzar pnimi. It's different than when a person really has usage rights in an area, and he's giving it up to a member of a different chatzar. In that case, you can't do bittul from chatzar to chatzar. This case is different because they don't really belong here. It's only their eruv that's bringing them in here. Right? We have a chatzar chitzayna, a chatzar pnimi. Who walks through who? The pnimi walks through the chitzayna, not in the reverse. It's only because their joint eruv was placed in the pnimi that the chitzayna is attracted to the pnimi. They have rights here. It's as though they live in there. But in the case where they didn't properly participate, they're just ruining things for the pnimi. So the pnimi has a right to say, look, be mavatal your access rights to us. Stay out of the area. Let us close the door and mind our own business. The chitzayna surah, and the chitzayna is certainly not allowed to carry throughout the chatzar. They don't have an eruv. They've been locked out of the eruv. So this is just one example where bittul will work min chatzar l'chatzar. And this is Rav Shita, only in this case, which is a different type of bittul. The bnei chatzar chitzayna can mevatel their access right to the chatzar pnimi, and the chatzar pnimi can just lock themselves in, use their eruv without interference for the bnei chatzar chitzayna. So this is in contrast to Rabbi holds that even according to Shmuel, you can do bittul min chatzar l'chatzar in the case of a chatzar chitzayna or a chatzar pnimis, in which case the pnimis walks through the chitzayna, since they make things usher for them due to their walk-through rights. There's oisrin, there's ma'arvin, both elements are present. Bittul can take place. Rabbi says no. Bittul can never take place from one chatzar to the other when you have real usage rights. But if it's just the eruv that's bringing you in here, that's giving you the usage rights, the eruv is attracting you to the chatzar, and you didn't probably participate in the eruv, then you can just give up your eruv rights, do that bittul to the other chatzar, stay out of the picture, and allow the pnimi to use their own chatzar. So he challenged Rava. We said that the eruv was sitting in the chatzar pnimis, and one of the bnei chatzar pnimis forgot to mishtachtes in the eruv. Rava says, bittul won't work. So Rav Huna ben Yeshua challenged Rava. Even in the case where one of the pnimi members didn't participate. Why are they both asa? Why both chatzeres asa? Let's apply bittul. Why? Live till high bar pnimis levnei pnimis. Let this fellow, this pnimi fellow, who forgot to be mishtatif in the eruv, be mavatal his rishus to his fellow chatzar members, the bnei pnimis. Right? You say you can't be mavatal to a different chatzar. Forget about the other chatzar. Let him be mavatal to his own chatzar. And you don't really need him to go ahead and do an explicit bittul to the members of the other chatzar. Bittul is not like granting a gift. You're not giving something. You're relinquishing your right. Once you give it up for your fellow chatzar members, automatically everybody gets a hold of it. Even the bnei chitzayna will get a hold of that right. You don't have to explicitly go give it to them. Livatal hay bar pnimis, the bnei pnimis. Let him do bittul to his fellow pnimi members. V'teisi chitzayna v'tishtu b'adayu. And the chitzayna members will now be mutter together with the pnimi members. They'll receive the effects of the bittul, even if he's not directly being avatal to them. So what's wrong in that case? Says what Kiman Rabbi Lezer. So Rabbi responded, are you following Shittas Rabbi Lezer? The Omar in the circle of Vatal Rishus L'chol Echad Echad. He holds that if you have a person in a chatzar who forgot to take part in the eruv, bittul is in place. He doesn't need to go personally to each person of the member of the chatzar and mavatal him specifically. As long as he does bittul to one, it's assumed to be applied to everybody. That's Rabbi Lezer's shita. So likewise, in our case, where the interior, the ben pnimi, is going to make bittul to his fellow chatzar members, you'd like to say, well, once you do it to them, it automatically applies to the members of the other chatzar as well, and there's no need to explicitly mavatal to the other chatzar, and therefore you want to allow this type of bittul. You're following Rabbi Lezer's shita. However, I'm following Shittas Rabbanan. The Amrit Tzorach Levatal Echad Be'echad. They hold bittul needs to be personal. You need to approach every single member, every recipient of your bittul, and be mevatel to him. So likewise in this case, when the Ben Pnimis forgot to be mishtatev in the Erev, and he'd like to make bittul, he can't be yoytze just by approaching the members of his chatzar. He needs to go over to the other chatzar as well, and specifically, personally give them, be mevatel to them. And that he can't do, because bittul doesn't work. Okay, let's review a brief review of today's daf. We discussed the concept of bittul rishus. So, when there's no erev, and they'd like to carry, nonetheless, bittul is an option. And when is bittul an option? We have a machlokes between Shmuel and Rabbi Yehuda. According to Rabbi Yehuda, bittul can be applied anywhere, anytime. There are no restrictions. According to Shmuel, you need to conform to certain guidelines. He says 2 elements need to be present to allow bittul. Oishrin u'ma'arvin. Erev needs to be an option here. A situation which allows Erev to take place and requires an Erev. In that case, the Chachamim provided an allowance, an alternative to Erev. If you didn't make an Erev, okay, bittul is an allowance. But otherwise, if it's just Oishrin ve'in ma'arvin, or it's ma'arvin ve'in Oishrin, in which case we don't have both those elements, bittul cannot be applied. So what are those examples? Oishrin ve'in ma'arvin is where a guy surfaced on Shabbos. So he's oisher them, but Erev is not an option here, because they can't establish an Erev on Shabbos. In this case, Shmuel maintains, being that bittul is a alternative to Erev, so only when Erev is applicable can bittul be applied as well, as opposed to this case where Erev is not a viable option, nor is bittul. Where it's ma'arvin ve'in oisrin, for instance, you have a chatzar on either side of a wall, with a pesach in between, so they have the option to join together with Erev, but there's no Isser, there's no requirement to make an Erev. Here as well, Shmuel maintains, bittul is not an option. However, where it's Oisr and Ma'arvin, so we have 2 examples. We have 2 homes with a churva in between, it's a joint usage area. But it's not a prime usage area. Even in this case, Shmuel will maintain, even though they're Oisr and Ma'arvin, bittul can't be applied. Whereas if you have 2 chatzers, Zulufnim and Zu, you have an exterior chatzar and an interior chatzar who are using the chitzoin as a walkthrough. In this case, both elements are present. They can be ma'arv, and they are oiser each other. Therefore, Abai maintains, in all situations, bittul can be applied. Rabbi says, no, even in this case, you cannot do bittul mechatzel chatzar. Rabbi gives us only one option, one scenario where bittul can take place. That's where they put the erev for both chatzers in the interior one. The erev is attracting the members of the exterior chatzar inward, and one of the exterior members forgot to be mishtatev in the Erev, in which case the Bnei Pnimis can say, look, you're just ruining things for us, stay out of the equation, let's close the door, you be mevatel your usage rights to us, and keep to yourself. In which case, even Rabbi will maintain, even according to Shmuel in this case, bittul will work.